Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge. My name's Howard Pinsky, and I haven't had coffee in more than 24 hours. Save me. Hope you're all doing well on this almost Friday. Welcome back to the XD Daily Creative Challenge. If you are tuning in live here on Behance, let me know who you are and where you're tuning in from. We've got Faisal and Juhi and Joe and Joshua, Abdullah and Aaron and Sarah and Eddie and Anit. If I mispronounce anyone's name, I do apologize. Hope you're all well. So today, day number 8 of the Daily Creative Challenge. We are almost at the end of this round, but fear not, we do have another round coming up just next week with a brand new host. Hey Paco, welcome. Let me go ahead and hop over to my screen, and this is the landing page, behance.net/challenge/XD. Welcome Lamont and Munir and Daniel and Kadima. Great to see all of you familiar faces and new faces as well. Daniel says coffee is creative fuel. I know, but I'm doing some medical tests right now, and they told me strictly no coffee, no chocolate, no caffeine for 3 days, and I don't know what to do with my life. It's rough. You don't realize how much you rely on that stuff until you stop taking it. All right. Head on over to the landing page, press the big blue button at the top if you haven't pressed it yet. That way you're notified when new challenges are released. Here's how things work if you're brand new to this and getting prepared for next week. Every single day, Monday to Friday, except the first Monday, you are going to receive a challenge. Sometimes they're progressive, sometimes they're completely random. This round has been a little bit of both. Started off progressive last week, building out a web experience, and then this week it's a progressive mobile experience. Kind of fun, right? You can also join us in our Discord community chat, which I haven't launched yet because the lack of coffee thing, right? So let me go ahead and launch that. And here's Discord. We've got about 50,000 members in Discord. That's insane. We have almost 1,500 online right now. You can get all the information about the challenges. You can, hey Richard, welcome. It's Thursday. It is Thursday. You can get information about what's new in XD, which we're going to have a lot of new stuff coming up pretty soon. We've got some new features coming up this month. We also have a ton of new features, some really exciting features coming up at Adobe Max, so stay tuned for that. Pro tips, I did upload a new video just yesterday. Go check that out after. If you have questions, you can do that, but more importantly, you can also share your work. Head on over to the current challenge channel. See, I need my coffee. And you can submit the work that you're doing for this challenge or the next challenge, or if you're working on past challenges, we have a channel for that as well. So go ahead, hop in Discord, have a good time. All right, so last week we started the process by building out a landing page for this finance application or website, and then we moved on to a live support chat widget, a features overview section, sign in and sign up. And then this week we started with the home screen for this mobile application. We took a look at scrollable charts. Yesterday we talked about auto animate and components and states. We built out a payment experience, and I'll show you that in a moment. And today we're going to look at repeat grids, one of my favorite features in Adobe XD. And we're going to be building out a wallet experience. So hopping over to Adobe XD, boop, there we go. Here is the template for today. And if you're continuing from the previous days, definitely go ahead and continue using your template that you've been working on, or if you're still catching up and you want to get a head start, grab the starter file right there. All right, there's also some inspiration down here at the bottom or in the middle of this particular template. These look pretty fancy, don't they? Mine will not come out anywhere near this fancy, but these are fancy. Nice gradients over here. All right, so here's where we landed off yesterday. Ignoring this one for a second, we landed off here, right? We have this great looking home screen with some nice looking colors. We've got this scrollable chart right in the middle. And down here at the bottom, we built out yesterday this payment experience using component states, and we tap on that, vroom, it expands. You can receive money, you can pay money. In this case, it's cryptocurrency, and I lost the close button, but you just tap on it, and it goes up, right? So today we're going to be building out the wallet experience. Now, the first thing I want to do, all I did was duplicated this home screen and I deleted some of the elements that were currently on it. What I want to do here is, add some transactions, maybe money that you received, money that you sent, that sort of thing. But we need to indicate what screen we're on. Now, of course, we could do that on the artboard level, wallet, but we also want our users to know where we are. So down here, we're on our home screen right now, but there's no indication of that. We haven't built that in yet. So inside of the navigation bar, and this is the main component, as you can see with the diamond at the top left, and this over here is an instance of that main component. So ideally, you would just make the changes once and it would propagate to all of them. So what I'm going to do here is inside of this component, I'm simply going to grab an ellipse and draw out a very small indicator, maybe even a bit smaller than this, just to let users know that this is the home screen. You can also do some fancy things by, reducing the opacity of the non-active icons, and you're noticing that on this one over here, and if you had 50 of these artboards, it would do the exact same thing. And now what I can do is, because this is an instance, not the main component, I can just shift this over, and it's going to override this particular navigation bar. And I can bring this up to 100%, bring this down to 60, and it did not affect this one. All right, so we've got that out of the way, and this is the wallet experience, and maybe we might want a little bit extra room, right? We have our transactions, and of course we could use a scroll group, and we definitely will, but we may want additional room to add some of these transactions. So Howard without coffee is like Boopski without the boop. Wow, that's deep, Munir. So here, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna delete the balance at the top, and maybe we just want this whole section to kind of come on up, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just move it on up, right? Maybe I'll want the logo somewhere right about there, so it doesn't, you have to keep in mind, we are building out an iPhone application in this case, so there's that lovely notch right about here, right? So you don't want to put anything up and above that. But we could put a background, for example, above that. So I'm going to just drag this out just like that. So we have this nice area, and this will give us additional room for our transactions, just like that. There we go. And I can also maybe just change this fill color to this lovely pink. Whoop. Perfect. All right. So now that we have a little bit more room to display our transactions, we need to start creating each line. And thankfully we have repeat grids to help us out throughout that process. So I'm going to grab my rectangle and I'm simply going to draw one out across the artboard. Ooh, just like that. And maybe just to give a little bit of style, because the rest of our application is pretty curvy and smooth, I'm just going to pull these corners inwards a little bit, maybe about 16 pixels, looks pretty good. And we've got something that looks like this. Got a bit of a problem, right? We can't see this white on the white background, obviously, right? So there's a few things we can do. The first thing is we could play around with the actual color of this background. We can pull it down just a little bit to add a little bit of gray in there. That's starting to help a touch, but we can also play around with shadows. And if you've watched these streams before, you know my feelings about shadows. I like shadows, but they need to be done well and subtly. So the last thing you want to do is you don't want to do this, right? Especially if you have everything in a repeat grid. That's just a no-no, right? So let me undo that. Let me actually bring this in a little bit, just so we have a little bit of breathing room around the sides. And what I'm going to do for this one, we might want to introduce a little bit of color to this particular shadow. So I'm going to go somewhere in the purple range, add in a color just like this, right? Now, again, you don't want the opacity up this high. So there's a few things we're going to do. We're going to first drop the opacity quite a bit. Let's start about 25%. We're going to see how that looks. We want to move the Y value down a little bit. So we're basically grabbing the shadow and pulling it down from the actual container, right? And the next thing we want to do is just blur the heck out of it. Just so I'm holding down shift and I'm pressing the up arrow just to increase by 10, boop. And that's all of a sudden looking a little bit better. I would argue it should be a little bit more subtle. So maybe I'll bring this down a little bit, bring this down, and bring down the opacity even more. Let's say 15%, right? You can experiment with the actual color, but that looks okay. It's not perfect, but it looks okay. And if we turn the shadow off, can't see it at all, and turn it on, it's a little bit better, right? And you can definitely experiment. And if you don't want to use the color, you just use a gray or a black or something like that, and it looks pretty good, right? But I like the tiny little bit of purple in there. All right, so now inside of this container, we want some information. Maybe over to the left, we want a picture of the person that we're sending to or receiving, right? Eddie says, Howard throwing shade. unshadows. I agree. I'm going to hold down Shift, draw out our lovely person, just like this. I'll put it about 16 pixels from the left-hand side. It's about 18 from the top, 17. Oh, I should probably fix this. Just like that. There we go. That looks a little bit better. All right. For now, I'm just going to fill it with a gray. We're going to fill this in a little bit using plugins or images, whatever it might be. We'll see. And then over here, we might want the person's name. So I'm going to just type out name, for example. Now, it defaulted to the last typeface I used, which is the Babus New Pro typeface. It's probably not going to work in this situation. It works great for things like headers, but for smaller elements, we may want to step back a little bit. So we're going to go for Sophia Pro, and we'll go, let's say, semi-bold, and we'll just do a fairly neutral color, like a dark gray, black color, right? So there's name there. And I'm going to duplicate this downwards to make my life a little bit easier, and we'll drop this, because this is secondary information, we'll drop this to about, let's say, medium. We can drop the size just a little bit, and maybe this will be category. And we'll just put some, so what I'm going to do in a few minutes, I'm going to pull some inspiration from the chat, some names and some categories. So I want you to all start throwing some categories in the chat, whether it's food or something specific like rent or boba or video games or whatever it might be. So for now, I'm going to put burritos, and right. And then for the name, I'll just put my name for now. And then over to the right over here, we want to put the actual dollar amount, or in this case, because we're working with cryptocurrency, we're going to put that instead. I'm going to make sure to right justify, because as I'm typing, I want it to go from right to left. In this case, it'll be 0. I don't know, something like that, BTC. There we go. All right, so we have all the elements that we need inside of this particular card. And what I want to stress right now is that it's going to be very important if you are using something like the Google Sheets plugin, which I'm going to show you in a second. It's important that you name all your layers correctly, right? So I have this ellipse here. I'm going to name this photo. I have a name. I'm going to name this recipient. We've got our amount. I'm going to name this transaction. We've got some categories in there. Sweet. Okay, this is gonna be good. And then burritos, I'm gonna name this category. I'm gonna have to scroll back up in a second. So we've got all of our elements named. What we want to do, we want to select all of them. So inside of the layers panel, I'm just gonna hold down Shift. I have the first one selected. I'm gonna click on the last one to select all of those. And I could turn these into a component if I want to. However, I'm gonna stress, don't do that just yet, especially since we want to put some bulk images and bulk text in there. So don't do that just yet, but you can group them, or you can just pop them into a repeat grid straight away. I've got a repeat grid button at the top, and all together now, boop. Ah, there we go. The boop animation works today. All right, so once we have our repeat grid set up, we've got our two handles. We've got one at the bottom, one over to the right, and I'm simply going to pull another card down. And you can pull as many of these cards down as you want. And you can adjust the padding just like this. You can do negative padding, right? And I'm just gonna pull a few down. Now, of course, we wanna make sure transactions, that our navigation bar is above, is above our transactions. There we go. So we've got a bunch going down. Now, of course, what is a wallet experience and a transaction section? The boop is back indeed, without actual content, right? We could just leave it like this and give it to our users and give it to our stakeholders, and it looks fine, right? If we press play, even this still works, right? Sort of. I'll probably have to change that. But adding some actual content in there is just going to make the experience that much better. So if you're new to repeat grids, let me show you a few cool things, how you can add content to a grid. First thing, we're going to hop over to Finder. So here's Finder, and I've got a bunch of images. I also have some text files. So let's say I wanted to very simply fill in these particular photos, right? Over here to the left. I can either grab one photo at a time. Finder would not move on me. I can grab one photo at a time and just pop that in there, right? I can do that for all of them. Or what I can do is I can select all the photos that I want to add into the grid and just drag the entire thing directly in. Just like that, and it fills it in really nicely. You can also do the exact same thing for text files. So we have a bunch of names right here. Drag that onto this. we have our categories, and we also have our transactions. And you're going to notice it filled in all that information for us going down all of our repeat grid cells, which is fantastic, right? There are also a few other ways you can do this. Let me back out of this. And let's say, for example, you don't have images on your computer, right? You can start using plugins. So if I hop over to the plugins manager, right down here, the plugins panel, I should say, one of the plugins you can use is the UI Faces plugin. Great plugin. Love this plugin. They're constantly updating it, and they just released an update not too long ago. So what you can do, you can pull from a few different sources. So Unsplash, for example, is a great source for royalty-free photos that you can use in your projects. You can either apply them randomly or you can select the individual photo. So when you press on this, a modal is going to come up and you'll be able to choose exactly which photos you want to put in there. So I can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know how many cells I have, but apply, right? And there we go. It put them in there. You can also do this person does not exist, and maybe Sam in the chat will put a link to thispersondoesnotexist.com. I talk about this a lot because it's mind-blowing what artificial intelligence can do. This basically creates people. I know it's crazy, right? But let me go ahead and select photos. And it's going to load in some example photos from This Person Does Not Exist. And these look like people, right? They look like people you would see in the street. Maybe they might look like family members. But all of these people are completely algorithmically generated by, I think it's an algorithm by NVIDIA. It's crazy. These are not actual people. And Sam posted a link so you can hop in there, and every time you refresh, a new person is going to be generated. It's very creepy. So you can just do that, and you don't have to worry about copyright. There's probably a license on their website, so take a look at that. But these are not actual people, so no one's going to get angry at you that you use their photos in your projects, right? So that's another option. The third option, I think this is third option, I don't know, maybe it's fourth or fifth. You can use the Google Sheets plugin, another one of my favorite plugins. So this is where I want all of your help. I'm going to basically start going through and adding some names to start. So I'm going to put Aaron in there, and I need, let's say, so I have a bunch of images here I grabbed from Diverse UI. So we've got Anna, and then we've got, I saw Richard in there. Let's see, Anna Heat. And we've got Joe. Who else do we have? We need another female. Let's see. Who do we have in here? I know I saw, there's Nina. Perfect. We've got Monir. And you can imagine, a world where maybe I'll just put Aaron again. Oh, that's, no, not that one. You can imagine a world where, you're working with somebody who is handling all your data and you don't want to really deal with it. And they can go through and do all this Google Sheet stuff and you don't want to worry about spreadsheets, right? I'm going to put Chris in here, and we'll do Anna Heat again, right? And here's where all the categories come in. So we've got, I saw Netflix in there. And then we've got coffee, of course. You're just rubbing it in that I can't have coffee. I see how it is. I see. All right, what else do we have in here? We've got Amazon Prime. And then Uber Eats. I can just do this forever. Donuts, that's a good one. Latte. Are we all having fun? Let's say more coffee. And then maybe some ice cream. And then we'll do one more. Do we have any more in here? Adobe Stock. All right, Adobe Stock. All right. Now for the amounts, I'm just going to put some completely random things in here just so I don't waste too much time. But again, a world where people are just, controlling the data and then they hand it over to you to put into your projects. Something like the Google Sheets plugin is perfect for that. You're going to see this in action in just a moment. So there we go. Whoops, that's way too much. 0. whatever, BTC. And at this point, I'm just going to start copying and pasting some of these, just so I don't waste too much time. And I'll just make a few small changes. All right. Here we go. So we have essentially Google Sheets, and you can have this Google Sheet as simple or as in-depth as possible. We have the recipient, we have the category, the amount, and the photo. And this is going back to what I was talking about earlier, why it's so important to name your layers in Adobe XD, and they have to correspond with the headers on the Google Sheet plugin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this link right up here, hop back over to Adobe XD, and I'm going to select my entire repeat grid. I'm going to go back to my plugins, down to the Google Sheets plugin, which also got an update not too long ago. And there's a few ways you can pull in sources. You can load in your Google Sheets, so you can actually authenticate Google Sheets with Adobe XD in this plugin, so it can pull in all of your sheets. I'm not going to do that now. You can paste a URL, which I'll do in a second, or you can upload a CSV. So if you don't want to use an online service and you have a CSV that someone emailed you or airdropped or whatever it might be, you can do that. I'm going to go ahead and paste the public link that I just copied, and I'm going to import. And it's grabbing all the content from that Google Sheet, all the headers and all the content within it, and we now can map it. So category is mapped to category, recipient is mapped to recipient. So it's going through looking at the headers, and it's also looking at the layer names in Adobe XD. And because we named it really nicely, this one actually wasn't named nicely. These three were, right? Category to category, recipient to recipient, photo to photo. But this one in particular, it wasn't, so it really doesn't know what it's doing. So in this case, I just have to basically say transactions should be mapped to the amount header, right? There we go. And once that's done, I can randomize it if I want to, but we'll just go ahead and press apply. And there we go, right? So it pulled in all this information from this Google Sheet. Again, it could be a local file as well, and it popped it directly into our transactions, right? And what's even cool is if you make changes, or the person who's controlling that data makes changes, let's say, instead of coffee, maybe this is rent, for example. All you have to do is go back here, press refresh, and it's going to, come on, do it. It didn't do it. Well, it should do it. Maybe there's some lag on the server, but once you update it, it should just update all that content, which is super cool. All right, so this is looking pretty good, right? Google Sheets plugin, UI Faces plugin, you can bring in content from your computer, whatever it might be, and you've got some transactions. Plugins makes life easier. I completely agree. So now we have basically all of our transactions looking pretty good, right? And we don't have any scroll groups set up. So if I launch this, I can't really scroll through the transactions, and that's where the scroll group comes into play. So I have my entire repeat grid selected. I'm going to hop over to the right-hand side inside of the Properties Inspector, and I'm going to choose the vertical scroll group. So previously we explored horizontal scroll groups. Now we're going to go vertical, and it's going to automatically set up the bounds, and it actually did a very good job. So it noticed that navigation bar was right over here. So it put that scroll group and the handle right above it. It's kind of smart, actually. The team did a fantastic job at this. So all I need to do now is just launch this and scroll, and there are all my transactions, right? Which is super cool. Now, last thing I want to touch on is connecting two screens together. We've covered creating transactions or prototypes between states, but now if we go to prototype mode, let's say I want to go to the wallet, I can select the wallet icon here, slide over to this artboard, and if you do have the same elements on both, you can use auto animate, but we're not really focused on animation right now, so we're just going to do a simple transition with none, and I'm going to go from here to here. There we go, and I'm going to press play. We've got our chart that we can scroll through. We can pull that up. Woo! Excuse me. Don't have the close button, but I can go ahead and press on the wallet, go home, and scroll through all my transactions. So that will just about do it for today. Hope you all enjoyed this challenge. Day number 8 of the XD Daily Creative Challenge. 9 is upon us tomorrow. It's going to be a fun one. Pretty simple though, but it'll be fun as always. So big thank you to everyone who has joined me today. Richard and Joe and Faisal and Nina and Anna, Aaron, Rodrigo, Sam, and everyone else. Big thank you for tuning in. Same time, same place, same channel with day number 9. Thanks so much, everyone, and I'll see you all next time.